1 to 5. Now listen and answer questions 1 to 5.
Good afternoon. Wanderlust Travel. How can I help you today?
Hello, yes, I'd like to book a holiday package. It'll be for me and my sister. We don't want anything too complicated, just something relaxing.
That sounds wonderful. Could I take your full name first, please?
Sure, it's Daniel Harris. That's spelled Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. And when are you planning to travel?
Well, initially, we considered leaving on the 12th of July because that was when my sister finished work. But after checking flight prices, it seemed a bit too expensive. So we'll actually travel on the 15th of July instead.
Okay, July 15th. And how long would you like the holiday to be?
Just 1 week. We'll be coming back on the 22nd.
Perfect. Now, are you more interested in a beach holiday, a city break, or maybe something adventurous like hiking?
I'd say more of a beach holiday. My sister wants to relax.
In that case, we currently have options in both Spain and Portugal. Spain's Costa del Sol is famous for its nightlife, but Portugal's Algarve region is popular with families and couples.
The Costa del Sol sounds exciting, but we've been to Spain before. I think Portugal would be better this time.
Portugal it is. Now, would you prefer to stay in a hotel or perhaps a self-catering apartment where you could cook for yourselves?
A hotel. Definitely. I don't want to be preparing meals on holiday.
Fair enough. One of our most recommended hotels is the Seaview Hotel. It's only about 200 meters from the beach, so it's very convenient.
That's nice and close.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
And what's the price?
For 2 adults staying for 7 nights with breakfast included, the total is £680.
That's not bad at all. Does that price include transfers from the airport?
No, the transfer is separate. It's £40 per person, which covers both the journey from the airport to the hotel and the return.
All right. And what about the facilities?
Well, the Seaview Hotel has an outdoor swimming pool, a small but modern gym, and complimentary Wi-Fi available in all rooms.
Good. I know my sister will appreciate the gym.
One thing to note, like many European resorts, the local government charges a city tax. It's €2 per night per person, payable directly at the hotel.
Thanks for letting me know. That's fine.
Would you like me to go ahead and make the booking now?
Yes, please. You'll need my phone number, right?
Yes. Could I have your best contact number?
Sure. It's 07865 23910.
That is the end of part 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers to part 1. Part 2. You will hear a guide explaining opportunities for entertainment, sports, and volunteering. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen and answer questions 11 to 15.
Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you to Westford, and today I'll be giving you an overview of some of the activities and facilities you can enjoy as new residents here. Hopefully, this will help you settle in and make the most of what the town has to offer. Now, first of all, I should mention the community center, which is really the hub of social life. It's located just off the High Street, next to the library. You might pass another building marked Town Hall on the main square, but that's for council meetings, not for leisure events. So remember, the community center is the place you'll want for classes and clubs. The center offers a wide range of courses. For example, if you're interested in fitness, you'll find both yoga and aerobics classes available. Yoga sessions are usually in the mornings, while aerobics is in the evenings, which tends to suit people who work full-time. But if sport isn't your thing, there are also creative workshops like painting and photography. The photography course has been especially popular recently, though it fills up quickly, so do register early. Moving on, the town has several parks for outdoor activities. The largest is Greenfield Park, which has a boating lake and tennis courts. It's often confused with Riverbank Park, which is closer to the railway station. Riverbank is smaller and mostly just a children's playground, whereas Greenfield really offers more variety for adults, too. Now, for those who like live entertainment, you should know about the Westford Playhouse. It's a small but very active theater. Don't confuse it with the Westford Cinema. They're in the same part of town, but the cinema shows films, while the Playhouse hosts drama productions and live comedy. Tickets for the theater are generally affordable, around £12 for most shows. Another facility worth mentioning is the Sports Complex. It has an indoor swimming pool, 2 squash courts, and even a climbing wall. The gym there is well equipped, though some residents prefer the smaller private gyms dotted around town. What makes the sports complex attractive is that membership also gives you access to free parking, which is otherwise tricky in the town center.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Issue for new residents. The local bus service is fairly reliable, though you may find the routes a bit limited late at night. The town is well connected by train, but parking at the station is expensive. Many locals cycle instead, and there's a cycle hire scheme where you can rent bikes for short journeys. The scheme isn't run by the council, but by a local charity aiming to reduce car use. For those interested in volunteering, there are plenty of opportunities. For example, the animal shelter often needs helpers to walk the dogs. The food bank also recruits volunteers regularly, especially around holiday times. However, the hospital does not usually take volunteers, only trained staff. A few words about the town newsletter. Every household receives a free copy each month, either by post or email. Some people mistakenly think it comes out weekly, but it's monthly. It includes updates on local events, council decisions, and even restaurant reviews. Speaking of restaurants, Westford has a growing food scene. Italian and Indian cuisines are most common, but there are also new Thai and vegan options opening. For inexpensive meals, students often head to the cafe near the bridge. Finally, just a reminder, the annual Westford Festival is held each September. Some assume it's in August because of the summer holidays, but September is the correct month. It includes parades, food stalls, and concerts, and is really a highlight of the year. So, that's a quick overview. I do encourage you to explore all these opportunities, as they'll really help you feel part of our community.
That is the end of Part 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers to Part 2. Part 3. You will hear two students discussing an article for their upcoming seminar. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen and answer questions 21 to 25.
So, Priya, I finally looked at the reading list for tomorrow's seminar. It's heavier than I expected. Did you go through the article on cross-cultural interviews?
Yes, though I must admit I found parts of it a bit contradictory. For example, it stressed how important face-to-face interaction is, but later suggested that remote methods could be just as effective.
Exactly. I was wondering about that. In fact, I thought remote interviews would be less reliable because you lose so many nonverbal cues. But apparently participants often disclose more when they're not physically in front of the researcher.
That's true, but it depends on the topic. Sensitive issues like health problems are often easier to talk about online, whereas technical subjects might still benefit from in-person questioning.
Fair point. Speaking of sensitive issues, did you notice the section on consent forms? The author suggested simplifying the language, which I agree with, but then it said oversimplification can make it seem patronizing, which I hadn't considered.
Right, and I think our supervisor mentioned the same in last week's lecture. If participants feel the form is talking down to them, they might lose trust.
Exactly, and trust is central. Without it, the data can be skewed, even if the actual questions are well designed.
That reminds me, what did you think of the case study on longitudinal research?
Oh, the one about tracking dietary habits over 10 years? Honestly, I thought it was fascinating. They expected participants to change diets gradually, but instead they found large, abrupt shifts.
Yes, which shows why official health statistics can sometimes be misleading. They present tidy averages, but those don't reflect the messy reality of people's behavior.
True. That's also why surveys are often better for capturing day-to-day changes, even if they're less rigorous than large data sets.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Although the article did caution against relying on surveys alone. They're cheap, yes, but sample bias can creep in without you noticing.
And that's why triangulation, using multiple methods, was emphasized. I suppose that's the real takeaway, not to depend solely on one method.
Agreed. By the way, did you read the appendix about funding? I didn't expect that in a research methods article.
I did. It said how funding agencies often prefer projects with quantitative outputs because numbers are easier to report. Qualitative studies sometimes get overlooked, even though they can provide deeper insights.
Which is a shame because understanding motivations and emotions can't always be captured numerically.
Exactly, and it ties back to our own project. If we frame it as purely numerical, it might get funded, but the richness could be lost.
So we need to strike a balance, perhaps include both statistical analysis and narrative accounts from participants.
Yes, and that's why tomorrow's seminar will be interesting. I'm sure others will argue the opposite, that numbers speak louder than words.
Well, we'll just have to defend our stance. It'll be a lively debate, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe by the end we'll see the merit of their argument too.
That is the end of Part 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers to Part 3. Part 4. You will hear a lecture about the history of building railways in mountains. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 31 to 40.
Today we'll be exploring the fascinating but complicated history of railway construction in mountainous terrain. While flat landscapes made track building relatively straightforward, mountains presented unique challenges. Early engineers had to contend with steep gradients, unstable rock, and unpredictable weather. These difficulties often delayed projects and increased costs substantially. Today we'll be exploring the fascinating but complicated history of railway construction in mountainous terrain. While flat landscapes made track building relatively straightforward, mountains presented unique challenges. Early engineers had to contend with steep gradients, unstable rock, and unpredictable weather. These difficulties often delayed projects and increased costs substantially. One of the earliest examples was the Semmering Railway in Austria, completed in the mid-19th century. Engineers struggled not only with the elevation, but also with harsh winters, which caused landslides and snowdrifts that blocked the tracks. Many experts at the time doubted it could even be finished. However, innovations such as reinforced bridges and carefully calculated gradients made the project a success. Now, an important factor that influenced railway expansion in these regions was financing. Governments were often reluctant to provide sufficient funds, as mountainous routes were more expensive than those across plains. In some cases, private investors stepped in, but they demanded tolls or guaranteed profits in return. This reliance on private capital sometimes restricted public access and limited the affordability of rail travel. Technological developments did, of course, help. The invention of tunneling machines allowed railways to cut directly through mountains instead of weaving around them. This not only shortened travel times, but also reduced exposure to avalanches and rock slides. However, Tunneling projects carried their own risks. Toxic gases, flooding, and cave-ins were constant threats to workers. Labor conditions, in fact, deserve special mention. Workers were often recruited from poorer rural communities or brought in from abroad. They were offered wages that seemed attractive, but faced extremely dangerous conditions. Records from the period show high mortality rates, particularly in tunnels where ventilation was inadequate. Despite the risks, the promise of connectivity encouraged further development. Mountain railways facilitated trade, tourism, and cultural exchange. Towns once isolated by geography suddenly became accessible. This transformation brought prosperity, but also unintended consequences, such as over-tourism and environmental degradation in fragile ecosystems. Interestingly, engineers often underestimated the long-term maintenance costs of these lines. Bridges had to be repaired regularly, and snow-clearing equipment had to be deployed every winter. Without constant investment, tracks quickly became unusable. In some regions, neglected lines were eventually abandoned, leaving behind ghost stations and rusting tracks as reminders of overly ambitious planning. Modern railway projects in mountainous regions now incorporate computer modeling to anticipate climate challenges. Advanced monitoring systems also help detect early signs of structural weakness. Nevertheless, these improvements do not eliminate financial risks. Budgets often overrun and delays are still common. There is also a social dimension. Some communities embrace railway growth because of the possibilities it provides, while others oppose it for fear of cultural loss and harm to their tradition. Another issue that continues to shape outcomes is the need for sustainability. Unlike in the 19th century, today's projects must prove they can limit environmental damage while still delivering economic growth. Planners who ignore sustainability may find projects rejected, even if technically feasible. So, to sum up, mountain railways remain symbols of engineering ambition, but their success depends not just on technical breakthroughs, but also on financial planning, social acceptance, and environmental responsibility.
That is the end of Part 4.